Dear friends, fellow attendees, and esteemed guests of the Pan IIT World of Technology 2021 Summit, welcome to the 3D printing and additive manufacturing session. 3D printing offers us a lot of exciting opportunities in terms of manufacturing complex and integrate shaped parts while reducing material wastage. Not only this, it has a lot more exciting potential to offer in the field of manufacturing. To take us through this wonderful discussion, we have Mr. Sumant Bhutoria, who is an entrepreneur working in the field of 3D bioprinting, high quality FDM, and other rapid prototyping technologies. Mr. Sumant is currently the CEO and founder at AlphaTech Systems, which is the market leader in 3D bioprinters in India. Please join me in welcoming the moderator for the panel discussion, Mr. Sumant Bhutoria. Over to you.
So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us in this wonderful panel discussion on 3D printing, also called the future of manufacturing. I am also joined by an eminent panel of people from different backgrounds. So, the way we've structured this panel discussion is that, we'll talk initially about some of the common or popular technologies, and then each of our panelists will, represents one of the more emerging or specialized 3D printing technologies, and we'll discuss about all the latest trends and what's happening in this field of 3D printing. All right. So for 5 minutes, I'm going to just introduce you to the field of 3D printing, and I guess all of you can see my screen now, and if you look at 3D printing, 3D printing has a history of more than 40 to 50 years. And a number of technologies are present within 3D printing. So I'll talk about the ones that are most popular. So you have something called selective laser sintering, SLS, or powder bed fusion. So here, the technology relates to using very fine particles of metals or ceramics, and then these are fused together by either a high-powered laser, or else you use a glue or a binding agent to bind all the particles together, and then you bind the particles every layer, and then layer by layer by layer, you kind of build the whole 3D printed structure. In the case of SLA stereolithography or digital light processing, the raw material here is a liquid photopolymer resin, and this is solidified by or cured by a laser or a projected light image. The third technology, which is very popular, and I mean, I would think 80% of 3D printing relates to these kind of technologies, is something called the fused filament fabrication or fused deposition modeling. And here, what we have is we have thermoplastic filament, which is heated beyond their melting points and then deposited by an extrusion head. Okay, and then I had to talk about bio 3D printing because this is something that promises to revolutionize healthcare as we know it. And so what we are doing here is we are using living cells and using various 3D printing extrusion technologies to build the organs, tissues, biomaterials, and nutrients. So we'll talk about all of this in more detail later on, but let me just give you a brief overview of what we have. In terms of 3D printing offerings, if you want to use SLA, you can use 3D systems. If you want to use FDM, you can use, there are so many companies in FDM now. I just wanted to talk about, say, the Olueti or AlphaTech Systems, that's my company. And within 3D bioprinting, we've got, my company, there's Brinter, there's Region. So all the different types of 3D printing machines that are available. Now, I want to talk a little bit about fused filament fabrication, because as I said, that's almost 80% of the total 3D printing market in terms of the number of machines that are in use. So fused filament fabrication is actually one of the lowest cost printing machines or printing technologies that we have. It's economical not only in terms of the machine, but also the raw material, which is basically a plastic polymer. The process flow of FFF, and this would probably relate to most of the other technologies as well. We normally start off with a 3D design file, which may be in various softwares. There's a slicing software which will slice the STL file or 3D file into computer-generated codes or G codes that can be used by the machine. The machines or the 3D printers will use these G codes and fabricate the actual 3D print that we have. And then finally, we have the finished product. So there may be other intermediate steps. We may also want to post-process the 3D print. But I think that's beyond the scope of this particular discussion right now. Just in terms of applications, wide variety of applications. So engineering, you talk about FMCG, you talk about packaging, you talk about biomedical. It's hard to figure out one area which has not been affected by 3D printing. Okay. I'll give you a small case study. This was almost 10 years back, but it's probably relating to a lot of the new in-house adoptions. So you typically, in any manufacturing setup, you normally have some pain points. So in this case, in the case of Kyocera, they had a pain point of finding robot hands or tips. So then with the use of 3D printing, we can make small batches of these kind of robot hands and use it in their machines. Similarly, in the case of boats or the shipbuilding, you can use rudders, you can make propellers. So ship propellers can be 3D printed as well. And then again, reverse engineering of spare parts. So all of these, a lot of various applications. So I'll talk more with the help of pictures. So here you've got various applications from the battery makers, tire makers, engine parts, manifolds. So almost every part of the automotive industry is now being 3D printed or the other, at least in the prototyping stages. If you look at the jewelry, which is a huge industry or a huge user of 3D printing. So they typically use the lost wax technique to make their various jewelry patterns. So just to give you a feel of how precise or how accurate these 3D prints can be made out. Various pre-surgical models from CT MRI scans used by medical doctors in their surgery. Here are some dental molds, surgical guides. Something for the FMCG packaging industry. You can make cups, you can make bottles, you can make anything that you need a mold for. Before you make a mold, you invest in a mold, you want to just validate your design. So, and then for the arts, a huge application. It's limited by your imagination. You can do whatever you want with 3D printing. All right, so we just wanted to give you an overview of 3D printing, and now I'm going to introduce you to my panel. We've got Aditya from Tivasta. We've got Aditya. Do you want to talk a little bit about yourself and your company?
Sure. Hello everyone. My name is Aditya. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tivasta. Tivasta works in the area of construction 3D printing or concrete 3D printing to make construction faster, cheaper, and better. We have been able to build this technology entirely in India. We recently 3D printed India's first 3D printed house, which you can see behind me. And we are currently carrying out several construction projects across India at this point of time. So that's a brief intro about us. We'll love to speak to you.
Thank you, Aditya. I have Pasi from Brinter in Finland. So thank you, Pasi, from joining us all the way from Finland. You want to
My pleasure.
Yeah, go ahead.
My pleasure, Sumant, and hello everyone. Greetings from Helsinki, Finland, from quite different temperature at the moment, about 10 degrees. So I represent Printer, which is a Finnish-based company, a startup in the bio printing sector, but we have a strong background in the so-called traditional 3D printing and operating from Finland from this day on, but this will very soon change. Will be established in the United States soon, and hopefully also in Asia. But we'll talk more about that. What we do and make is what you see around me on top of my shoulder. So we'll be talking more about the application areas that will hopefully be helping the humankind in the future. Thanks for having me. This is a great pleasure.
Thank you, Pasi. And finally, Arun from Pandaram. Please, Arun, go ahead.
Hi, Sumant. And thanks for this opportunity. This is a great event and a great forum actually. So my name is Arun Chandru. I am a co-founder of this company called Pandaram Technologies. We are a life science tissue engineering regenerative medicine company. We use 3D printing as a tool to shape our organoids and shape our tissues. And this is a particularly helpful tool wherein designs which are kind of not possible, as Sumant was mentioning, could be made possible in a kind of a sterile and a user-friendly manner. So that's what we are looking at. This company is based out of Bangalore, and now we have labs in the US as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun. So let's start with the first question or first area of discussion, and this relates to how 3D printing has disrupted each one of our areas or sectors. So let me start with Aditya. Aditya is in construction. So Aditya, you want to talk about how 3D printing is disrupting the construction industry?
Sure. So 3D printing is a new entrant in the construction space. We have just had 3D printing for less than a decade now in this space, and the construction industry has been facing challenges which 3D printing and robotics can solve. So construction industry is notorious for not adopting technologies, and hence we have had a productivity gap developing between let's say construction as a sector and manufacturing as a sector. So if you adjust it for inflation, construction productivity across US, OECD countries and India has actually gone down. And what we are trying to do is bring in robotics, bring in new methods of manufacturing like construction 3D printing into the sector and enable customized construction in a large way across this industry. So what we can do is we can scale up and rapidly build infrastructure using construction 3D printing, houses, toilets, premium facade elements. But at the same time, we retain the ability to customize each and every structure as per the customer's need. So what we are enabling is mass customization, but at scale. So this is going to disrupt construction industry in a way where cost is going to come down, but customers will retain the ability to have the house that they want. And a house in a country like India, which is still a developing country, is the single largest asset that a person will own in their lifetime. And hence it's a very big change. So yeah, that's briefly about how it's disrupting the construction industry.
All right. Pasi, do you want to talk about how this is disrupting the bioprinting areas, biotech?
Certainly, yeah, yes. It's an area that's still relatively new. So I think when you asked me previously some days back that how would developing countries benefit from that, I think every country is a development country, even Finland in that sense, being a high-tech country, because this is a completely new field that people have been talking about. When I studied in North America, about 25 years ago, we were talking about bioprinting, but it was more, people were having smiles on their faces when we were talking about it. Not so much anymore, but it's taking a long time, and it will be taking still a long time before we have organ transplants and we can print parts of human brain or kidneys, for example. But there is already radical change in drug development, for example, curing rare diseases, modeling tumors, for example, aggressive brain tumors. They grow quite differently when we're able to mimic the actual growth in real life instead of having a 2D surface where we have done the research previously. So that's a radical difference. Also, it's going to bring down the prices. So that's going to change the world radically, I think. So what we call as low-cost countries now, we're not going to be talking so much about what country it is, but who's going to be able to do it. And one disruption is, of course, in education and training, because it combines so many different sciences and fields. So I think we'll be coming back to that issue later today, but is that you really require a lot from the people who are working in this field, because you have to be able to cross the silos from economics to forestry to biology to medical fields and many different fields. So it's going to be requiring a lot from the companies, the universities, and the individuals who are working in this industry. So it is going to be a big change, and one is this thought challenge is, of course, that we don't only work in bioprinting, but for example, printer is able to print thermoplastics, which is going to be in the electronics industry. So it's going to be disrupting not only bioprinting, but other industries also, more traditional industries. So that's going to be a big change.
Great. And then finally, Arun, I know you're doing a lot of work on organs and so on. So you want to talk a little bit about that, how it's disrupting your field?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I'll agree with actually Pasi on this matter that things have been promised for the last, say, about 20 years or 15 years. That 3D printing is going to help print your kidney or lung, liver, etc. But that hasn't happened actually, because 3D printing is a tool in a whole gambit of things which is required for tissue engineering and regenerative medicine. It's a kind of a very multidisciplinary field wherein scientists, biologists, along with the 3D printing guys or the advanced manufacturing guys actually, and working in conjunction with clinicians to make it a reality. And the technology is still at in the stages of infancy. There is a lot of research work going on, but you don't see tissue printed or say 3D printed organs or tissues available in the market actually. People are still working towards it. It holds a huge promise, but it's extremely challenging. But the rewards are so good that people are still kind of continuing to push it. And that's where a company like us, about 35 people, multidisciplinary, working towards very small tissues like the human cornea, which can have more impact. So that's where kind of the field is emerging. But in holistic healthcare industry, it has had a lot of impact in terms of surgical learning tools, in terms of customized medical devices, which are not actually living things, but greatly help in improving the quality of life of a patient.
Right. So absolutely, as all the panelists are saying, every sector is getting disrupted in some way or the other now. But so as we talk about disruption, we also need to understand that more and more we are seeing some new companies emerge, or we are seeing that there is greater and greater level of adoption right across industries. So Pasi, do you want to talk about how what you see in terms of adoption in the bioprinting healthcare segment?
Sure, I can say a couple of words on that. That I'll try to be brief about it. We can talk a lot more, later on if time permits, and people are feel free to contact me. My contact info is going to be on the screen too. I think that when we talk about the adoption in the healthcare side, when we talk about our main clientele is actually the universities. That's something where the advancement is the fastest, and that's where we have these what we call propeller heads. People are trying out different things and making new research, and so there things are being adopted very quickly, I think, and many universities around the world are kind of I wouldn't say panic, but now they realize that okay, this is a field where things are happening incredibly quickly, and there's a lot to be studied. And this is what Arun was saying too. There's still a lot of work to be done, but lots have been created. When we talk about one client sector that we have is the big pharma, so to speak, is that they expect more ready-made solutions. So there's not so much the willingness of moving into and adopting this kind of technology into the production upfront until we've proven it. So and that's why startups are needed, and new people are needed, young people from universities and smaller companies. And that's also another, in my opinion, positive disruptive factor is that you can come from anywhere in the world as soon as you have somewhat trained people, educated people, and ideas, because there's a lot of room in this field. Of course, you will need funding at some point, but I think this is a couple of points about the adoption in the field. That I would say at universities first for us at least, and then the pharma companies are going to be the second, and then the whole healthcare sector will follow as soon as we have, for example, application when we have materials, we have the devices, we have the protocols, how to do it, and then you need all sorts of approvals. Like in the US, you need the FDA approvals and many other countries. And that's a very slow process. So adopting new technologies is going to take a lot longer in some that are very successful nations now, and then maybe actually the development will be faster in some other countries and some other regions in the world. So this pace of adoption, I think, is going to be quite different in different parts, and it's difficult to say who is or which parts will be the winners. It's up to who is going to be active in the field.
Absolutely right, Pasi. It's who's going to take the lead. So, Arun, do you want to talk a little bit as well on this?
Yes, I agree on this point actually that adoption is not very straightforward in the healthcare industry, particularly when you come to big pharma, because big pharma is usually very risk averse and very reluctant to adopt new technologies, and it has to be shown through various clinical studies that this is more effective than the standard of care, etc., etc. So, and it has to go through very stringent regulatory approvals from the FDA in the US, EMA in Europe, India, BCJ, etc. So essentially, it's also kind of what's a pull from the other side. It's not like you make something 3D printed and then try to push it out in the market actually. So is there a real need, and what is the real need area actually in terms of healthcare, wherein 3D printing can actually impact in the short term, in the medium term, in the long term. The long term, we know that complex organs which are kind of almost impossible to manufacture by normal techniques, they can be possible actually. But what in the shorter term? In the shorter term, possibly new kind of medical devices, wherein single-use syringes, or maybe better inhalers, or better conduits for say ventilators, etc., etc. So these are some of the things in healthcare which will be much say sooner adopted, because there is actually a need in terms of complex manufacturing there, and the regulatory considerations are much less stringent than putting an organ into the human body. So the adoption across geographies is also important. For example, India has in fact taken a lead in terms of having 3D printed parts, in the fight against COVID actually. So you could see, a number of startups and number of institutions, academic institutions from India participating in that, fight using 3D printed, different stuff actually. So that's where, the adoption across geographies also is important. India has a good talent pool in that sense.
Right, thank you. And I think healthcare, obviously, the adoption pace will be much slower, but what we're beginning to see is collaborations between the universities and big pharma. And I think that's a good way forward, because it kind of hedges the risks on both ways. Universities benefit as well from funding, whereas big pharma has a ready-made pool of talent to tap from universities, and of course a lot of startups coming from the universities, right? All right, Aditya, you want to talk about disruption in construction?
Right. So yeah, in the construction field adoption, I assume that it'll be a little slower, but in fact it has been a great surprise that India and other countries across the world are adopting 3D printing in the construction space quite quickly. We have had, in India, 2 other companies trying to 3D print large-scale structures. We have received several project orders, and there is a excitement about construction 3D printing in the field. So we are getting far more orders than what we can handle at this point of time, which is very surprising, because I thought that this would be a very conservative industry. And the regulators in India have been very, very sort of forthcoming in terms of how they want to deal with construction 3D printing. So in India, there is a new framework whereby regulators are looking at giving quick licenses to new technologies. They are asking us to sort of come up with the data set using which they can verify and validate our technology, which we are working on at this point of time. So there is quite a lot of excitement from the customer end and also from the regulatory side for construction 3D printing. Across the world, we have seen companies such as Icon and Mighty Buildings 3D printing quite a few houses in US. And of course, in China, we have a company like Winsun printing multi-story apartments. So it's an exciting field, exciting era for construction to be in, because we are seeing quite a lot of disruption with robotics and new technologies.
Great to hear that. And, as industries adopt 3D printing, we also face a lot of challenges. in terms of how 3D printing can replace some of the traditional practices. And so here I want Arun to give us some overview on what kind of challenges do we expect as you approach your customers or you get new people to come in and use 3D printing.
That's adoption of any technologies such as 3D printing is not straightforward in healthcare. So the challenges are mainly to convince the people who are the end users to adopt it, and first of all to make them aware of the benefits in a much more rational manner. So that takes a bit of time in healthcare. So that's where one of the challenges actually the time taken. So usually a drug or a new device, it takes about 6 to 10 years to 12 years to actually go from ideation to entering a human body actually. Because in this particular field, healthcare actually people talk about the patient's safety being the highest actually. So there is no compromise on that. So in terms of any new technology, whatever benefit you are showing, maybe ease of manufacturing or something like that, it has to show a substantial benefit to the patient, and absolute safety should be assured. So that is one of the challenge. Now in terms of again healthcare, most of the developments in healthcare and 3D printing, they're all in the research and the academic area actually. The challenges there are also heavy in terms of having the right people working together. So a scientist who is a hardcore biologist actually maybe working on stem cells and how to grow the stem cells and do manipulations on them, etc., etc. He or she should be able to understand what is 3D printing and how is 3D printing going to influence the stem cell study. So there is a kind of a multidisciplinary approach here which is required, and that is one of the challenge in terms of 3D printing being adopted even in the research community actually. So that's why you see multidisciplinary institutions, they have 3D printing in their said domain actually in terms of life science and healthcare.
Great. Aditya, challenges that you face?
Right. So, I mean, the problem with building a structure is that in most of the cases, it is the single largest investment that a person makes in their lifetime, and they want it to be perfect and they want it to be as safe as possible. So, the challenge that we primarily face is convincing customers that construction 3D printing is safe. The buildings that we 3D print are as safe or better than what is built conventionally. So we have to execute several projects and demonstrate to the market that construction 3D printing can do X, Y, and Z type of structures, but at the same time show them over a period of time that it's safe, it is completely viable, it is viable in terms of cost and also stability. So I would say, I mean, we are focusing on execution of several projects at this point of time of different types so that we can show to our customer base and also to the market in general that it is a viable technology across geographies. So that is the single most important task at this point of time.
Right, absolutely. You've got your task cut out. It's difficult to convince people there. All right. So again, coming back to to India, because I think a large portion of the audience here have interests in India. So we may have people from all over the world now in this particular conference. And I think large majority would be from the US. But when we talk about India, I mean, all of them have their interests in India. We want to see India emerge as a stronger nation. How do you think 3D printing as a technology is relevant for us? So I let you let you take this on, Aditya.
Right, absolutely. So 3D printing is an absolutely important technology for India to emerge as a manufacturing hub. There has been a lot of emphasis that has been placed in the past 2 to 3 years in terms of Make in India and also Atmanirbhar Bharat, where we want to be self-reliant in terms of our manufacturing capability and also our capability to deliver critical goods, especially in a time like COVID, where we have supply chains being broken. So 3D printing is, of course, a distributed supply chain kind of a system where you can have smaller but stronger nodes which can customize and deliver goods faster. So from a manufacturing 3D printing perspective, it is absolutely essential, and it can really change the way we imagine manufacturing. But from a construction perspective, it is very straightforward. India requires about 100 million houses or 10 crore houses to be built by 2030. With conventional technologies, it is just not possible to deliver that sort of numbers at the cost that we are imagining. So we need a new technology, a new wave of construction happening in this country, and it cannot be done with this in situ or normal kind of construction that we carry out. And hence, construction 3D printing becomes extremely important. So I would say in the biomedical field as well, I'm sure Arun will be able to speak more about that. But I mean, delivering distributed manufacturing is the key element for India.
Right. So I come to Passy now, and Passy, what I want you to talk a little bit about is the challenges that you face as you talk to your customers, and of course, you may want to talk about some of your experiences when you deal with countries like India or or Asia or South America or anything else. But I do want you to talk about the challenges that you're facing. I mean, what do you see as your biggest threat, or what is your biggest problem area here?
That's a tough question because there are several challenges as we all know. Whenever, I suppose the biggest thing is that whenever you're trying to do something new, something that you believe in and you know that it works and it will work even better in the future. But with 3D bioprinting in particular, it's something that, for example, I think Big Pharma is a good example. We have a good collaboration with them, by the way, so I'm not saying it because of that. But when they have their systems and their organizational ways of working, it's all set, in a certain way. And then you come in with a new idea that's going to disrupt it all. And also in healthcare, you have doctors have their roles, the nurses have their roles, and then the hospital leadership have their role, and the regional management has their role, and you're coming in and you're disrupting. So I think that the newness is the biggest challenge, and then the second one actually that comes out of the first challenge is that it's complex. People think that it's going to be just some kind of liquid that comes out of a simple computer program device and it's easy to do. It's not like that. You have hundreds or not, if not thousands of parameters, sometimes different materials, different circumstances, different sterility levels and different requirements. So it's I think the complexity is number two. The newness and complexity, those two are the things that I would mention. There are several other challenges, but I think the promise of what we can actually do is much bigger than the challenges, and we will overcome those challenges, I'm quite sure. And I was just going to credit also Aditya, because we actually surprisingly crossing the silos in Finland, in our company at least. We're looking at the construction industry about how they are managing the contractors and the subcontractors, and how they're managing, which is very common in construction, not so much in what we have been doing in the past. People have been in their own labs doing their own thing, but not managing this whole chain. And surprisingly enough, well, maybe not surprising to you, Aditya, but to us, it's been great learning experience to learn from other industries.
Right, absolutely, Passy. And finally, so Arun, very briefly, I want you to talk about the technology relevance in India, and more about how you plan to build the talent, or do you face any challenges? And yeah, if you want to go ahead with that.
Sure. In terms of impact or say influence on developing countries like in India, technologies like 3D printing, they are obviously very important actually. And at the end of the day, one should realize that 3D printing is a tool, or it's a method to manufacture things. It's not the end product, or it's not the final thing what you're going to do. It's like a chisel, right? So what you do with it, it actually matters. So the applications have to be country specific. They have to be very rooted in the grassroots. Say for example, Aditya mentioned that there are millions of homes which are required. So that's a problem which is rooted in India, which needs a solution, right? So that's where this comes here. In our case, actually, we are looking at millions of human corneas which are required actually to take care of some of the corneal blindness. Actually, that is where these kind of technologies will have an impact. So we should identify key areas where 3D printing will have a impact, and we know that what are the specific advantages of 3D printing, etc., etc. And in terms of developing the manpower or developing the skill sets in this country as well, we know that 3D printing is complex, 3D printers are complex, etc. But at the end of the day, when we want to recruit our new engineers and scientists into 3D printing. The idea we should give them probably is, 3D printing is just a XYZ traverse, with a nozzle. Actually, you can use out any material and you can create your own things actually. So that people get interested, so that the kind of say understanding about additive manufacturing or the concept gets ingrained into younger minds actually, probably in schools and probably in technical institutes as well. So that's where we need to develop this as a kind of a tool, as a new tool to make new things. What do you want to make? It's up to you, and how do you want to use it? It's up to you. So.
Right, absolutely. As you said, I mean, it's up to us how we use this technology. And so finally, I want all the panelists to now give us some concluding remarks. I'll start with Aditya. Do you want to kind of just wrap up a little bit, summarize on what we all discussed?
Sure. So I think from my perspective, 3D printing is an absolute necessity for a developing country like India. We have to train ourselves to know this technology better. And this is not a technology which has reached a turnkey sort of a level where you can just import a machine or buy a machine from somewhere, integrate it into a production chain. You have to know how to work with it. You have to know how to play with it. You have to know how to develop it for the future. So India has the potential. It has the skill levels, or the people with the skill levels to sort of take 3D printing to the next level. We can become a 3D printing manufacturing hub, 3D printer manufacturing hub, and we have to sort of dive into it deeper to understand what the technology is and take it forward. So as Sumant mentioned in the beginning, so there are nearly 20 to 30 different technologies within 3D printing. So 3D printing is really a family of different technologies. So I would encourage everyone who's listening to this talk to sort of dive deeper into this and be a part of the manufacturing revolution that we are undergoing.
Absolutely, Aditya. Pasi, over to you.
Yeah, as you probably noticed in my previous answer, in this summary, I would like to disrupt a little bit that I didn't want to talk about India as a developing area. I mean, it is developing, but so are we. We're such a so-called high-tech country, but in this area, this is so new still. I think I completely agree with Arun that yes, in the area for diseases, we need to take into account the local disease. What do we have in Finland? What do we have in India? But many of the mechanisms in like cancers, or for example, are the same. That there's a bit of variation, and then we have global issues like the pandemic, the COVID-19 at the moment that will affect everybody around the globe. And we need collaboration between the countries, not only India and the Asian countries, but all the countries that are affected. So I think that's important, that the disruptiveness is going to come from it being surprising, and so we learn from the construction industry, for example. Then the education sector is going to have to follow and train people who are more multidisciplinary. That's something that's quite obvious. And my own background, I've studied biology, mathematics, economics, forestry, because of that a lot of the materials are coming from cellulose, for example. So you need to know many different areas, and this is one of the biggest challenges for any business, not only in Finland, but in India and in the United States, Canada, in many other places. And when we think about us being a foreign company to India, we are developing high-tech, high-end products that are reasonably priced. So it's not usually, yes, it's a price-sensitive market, but we need local people who work with us, like Sumant and Arun and maybe even Aditya in the future. And that, I think that's the key to our success in that market area, and also a big learning possibility for us, so that we learn from that feedback that we get from the field. And that's the whole history of Printer as a company, that we are constantly developing the technology. It's never ready, it's always feedback from the field and very challenging situations in most cases. Like we have been talking, that there's still a lot of research going on and needs to be done. But we are involved in brain development, brain printing project with universities. We are involved in kidney printing projects, and those will eventually be done. And I think that will be great for the humankind, minimizing animal testing, new medicines to kill diseases that we think that are, and cure them that we are now thinking that are not curable. So that will revolutionize things, and also bringing this to people. And this is something that's pertinent to India, is that so many people, huge population, a lot of people need healthcare, and so I think this technology will also bring down the cost radically in the future. That's something that's going to be a big game changer, and we'd like to be part of that, wherever that is in the world. And I'm glad that we found these partners in your country, and bringing this learning from your country to Finland, so it's not one-way street. Very proud to be on board.
Absolutely. And finally, Arun, very quickly, if you want to just conclude.
Thank you. So, I agree with Pasi here that, essentially India should also be looking at, global problems, and, some of these problems actually transcend. And 3D printing really, impacts the right areas in these, aspects actually. And, particularly in terms of, say, Pandorum, we have been looking at specific problems in healthcare, which is, kind of impactful and, kind of transcends actually. And cornea is a tissue, on the top of your eye, actually. It is kind of, probably the most common reason for blindness due to any kind of acid burns, lime burns, etc. And countries like India, people are waiting for the transplants forever, actually. And even in the US or in, so-called developing countries, when they have transplants, it's from 80-year-old person, actually, and, given to 30-year-old, say, person. The final goal of, tissue engineering, regenerative medicine, is to actually manufacture these kind of corneas in the lab and put them in the human body. So that's where kind of the real impact would be. In terms of other areas of say 3D printing, obviously as say distributed manufacturing is a kind of area actually particularly which is like important, right? So that is where this 3D printing can influence in terms of demographies which are kind of difficult to access, etc. In terms of manufacturing, India already has a very solid ground in manufacturing. This is an additional tool, extra lathe machine which has come into the say for example whole gambit of things. We should use it appropriately, develop our manpower in such a way that we can impact the key areas. And we are looking forward to being a part of this journey, the 3D printing revolution.
Right. So thank you everyone here. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the audience. In concluding remarks, all that I would say is that 3D printing offers a wide variety of tools. They may or may not replace your entire manufacturing process, but certainly it's another tool that you might want to think about of using at the appropriate time, at the appropriate place. So reach out to all of us. Reach out if you would like to understand how 3D printing can help your business grow. And again, thank you very much and have a great day.